Welcome to 1856 First Church, Pella, Iowa podcast.
Ooh, hello, First Church friends and family. I'm Breanne, and as you can tell, I'm not Pastor Bob, but he is currently on the road returning Pastor Samuel to the airport. But I am joined today by Alex Foley. How are you?
Greetings, everyone. I'm doing well.
Great. Well, not pastor. We were just talking.
Palexter.
I just totally flubbed all of my words. But we were just talking about you being called Pastor Alex. And so I about said that too. But he is not officially Pastor Alex, but he did join the staff here. So welcome.
Yeah, I can see all that excitement you had in your voice at that moment, Breanne. Yeah, we're excited. I just joined as the director of Discipleship and Missions. And so this is day 2 of my time here in that role at First Church, getting my office ready, getting connections made, getting some vision boards set up, hoping to make an impact and really be able to help First Church grow.
That's awesome. Well, I think everyone was excited to hear that you joined the staff on Sunday. And I remember I had to go down to Kids Quest to teach, but I did hear that you had said, maybe I'll make my sermon short.
Yeah, I always like to give the people something that they don't actually get at the end. You know, really starts a sermon out well. No, it's just a common joke because I don't know if it's carried away or I just enjoy God's word and communicating it. And I have so many ideas and thoughts and verses to share that it is rarely short. Mm-hmm. So I knew I was coming in packing with 18 verses on the screens for last Sunday. So I was just trying to make it a bit lighter in the humor of it that unfortunately it might be the full extent of the time.
Well, when I heard that, I thought there's no way. But we are glad that you didn't shorten it because it was very good.
Oh, I appreciate that.
But before oh goodness, I don't know if you heard that on there, but it sounds like they're tuning our piano. So we'll try to get through this not too loud from the piano. But we have a couple announcements. So Alex is going to try to help me go through these. First, we need to remind people the children's musical is coming up. And this isn't just for the families with kids in it. It is on Sunday, the 14th, right?
Yes, Sunday the 14th
Thank you.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Good job, Alex.
Yeah, I can read a bulletin.
Have you come before? Have you gone to the
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It is really a delight, honestly. Not just seeing the kids in motion doing their thing, but it's really like the aspect of the greater family of the church celebrating people who put in work and effort to convey the gospel in a beautiful manner. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely walk away not just like entertained, but inspired to actually like continue to grow together with the family of the church to find more, I would say, increasing creative ways to try to convey the gospel.
Yeah, no, I appreciate when those that show up are beyond the families because it is another opportunity for us to connect. I love the Christmas musical. Grandma Millie does a fabulous job. There's
Absolutely.
Always great jokes in there that often the kids don't understand. But
those are the best ones.
Those are the best ones. That's right. And then ladies, we get to gather the Women's Christmas Gathering on December 6th at 6:30. So I think you can still RSVP if you need to. Haven't done so already, but that will be a wonderful time. Important other things here, December 12th. If you want to order a poinsettia, that is due here soon on the 12th, and they're $10 a piece. We use them to adorn the stage for Christmas Eve service. And also we have Angel Tree. The boats here in our church arrange that every year for the gifts, and those are due by the 21st. If you have any questions, just talk to a Viral Boat.
Yeah, I want to double announce that women's gathering on December 6th, Saturday, 6:30 to 8 p.m. Kendra's super excited for it. And, you know, I did just pick up the director of discipleship category. So there's just a hope and an encouragement that I want to give to other people that don't underestimate the power of meeting together in a special set apart time with people that are like-minded and can encourage you. I just want to really encourage everybody to take that opportunity.
Yeah, well, great. I am so glad Kendra also joined me for the Deck the Halls here at the church, as well as other people. And I was so thankful we were able to complete it in 2 hours. Plus, I had extra projects. So well done, everybody. And it got done very quickly.
Yeah, Kendra came back glowing. She loves, awesome. I don't know if you know this about Kendra, but she almost went into interior design as a bachelor's. But chose teaching because it's a bit more employable. But sure. But yeah, she absolutely loves it. And I think that just the ability to come together with other people and do something for the betterment of the church just makes you very fulfilled.
Yeah, no, I agree. Also wanted to we were talking about fellowship and coming together, and I just, wanted to take a moment to also reflect our dear saint, Ron Riefelt, has gone to be with the Lord. And sad for us, but happy for Ron. And my understanding is his funeral is this week.
Yeah.
Did you get to spend much time with Ron?
Here and there. Yeah. Some precious moments with Ron. Sometimes on Sundays, sometimes on Wednesday nights, and just some different precious moments when somebody would make some joke that I love studying and knowing things about the Bible, and that I should go talk to Ron because he's in the same kind of boat. And so then I would go have some conversations with him, and he just had such a warm smile. Is one of the biggest things that I will remember from him, is that it was such an invitational posture that he would have toward people, like a very welcoming, warm kind of posture that he had in his speech and in his face. And I just loved that about him.
Yeah, I would agree. Ron has been a guest on here a couple of times, and his wife, Ruth, and I just really enjoyed learning from him. He did have a very humble attitude in his teaching style, which I appreciated. But also to know, man, it's a wonderful time of year as we get into December, but Arlene Rorda is celebrating her 90th birthday tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which I think is just awesome. My oldest birthday is also on December 3rd, but she's turning 17. And so we talk about that. Arlene and I are in the Women of the Word together.
That's a beautiful thing in itself.
I just love listening to all that she has learned over her time. And so I wanted to wish her a happy birthday on the podcast.
Yeah.
Trying to get her on here to listen. Her daughter's been trying to get her set up.
There you go. Maybe one day.
One day. So maybe she'll listen to this one.
Yeah. It's so important. Again, plug in discipleship, but Titus 2, says older women train the younger women, and it can be a 20-year-old training a 15-year-old or a 90-year-old training a 50-year-old or who knows what. But it's just passing down that wisdom and that experience that goes so much further than we imagine. Yeah. And that's super cool.
Yeah. Arlene has been quite the encourager to me, and she didn't even realize it, but she would always just have a very kind or warm smile for me while I was wrangling all of my children. So I always appreciated her for that. So now we get to study together, which is great.
Yeah, there you go.
So, well, as we mentioned, Alex has joined staff, but he also had duties on Sunday. He did the first week of Advent for us. We have closed Daniel for now, which we will go back to after the Advent season. But I understand you will also be preaching next week, so you can kind of maybe give us a little peek into that.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to jump back in, and it'll be actually kind of the very opposite structure. We'll be going verse by verse through a passage instead of kind of the smorgasbord of this last week.
Yes,
so it'll be cool.
Said that. I loved that word that you used, smorgasbord, in Scripture, because it was. You had, just to give people a peek, if they haven't listened, it was Old Testament and then peeking into the New Testament, how they went together. And so we'll kind of go through that. I was expecting a wild sermon title because that's kind of what you're also known for. But it just was, what is with us?
Yeah. So I decided to be just a little bit tongue in cheek there, like if you're saying, what's with you, or what's with us? But really the question is like, what is with us, in terms of a who and in terms of the greater perspective of a presence or an identity or an understanding, a knowledge, those different aspects of what would you say is with you, and going into that concept. But yeah, actually the title was already given to me. I had to request the slight change. So maybe I will not disappoint this Sunday. I'll bring in something wild. Yeah.
I appreciate the puns or the different things that you bring into this. So it's pretty good. on Sunday, you had talked about your wife as you introduced this
Yeah.
and how the peculiar way that she reads books.
Yeah, it's actually really funny that there have been so many people, I'm talking almost double digit at this point, that have come up to me since that and have either talked to me from the church or that were watching or my family and saying, don't tell anyone this, but I do that too. Or somebody else would come up and they would say, how could she ever do that? It's like really polarizing opinions about reading the last page first. But yeah, it's just super cool to actually think of the comparison to how we would never shield somebody from the finish of the gospel or of the Bible because it's so essential to our core beliefs about what's going to happen in the future or at the end. And yet when we're reading a story, we want to wait for the punchline, but we already have the punchline. And that doesn't mean that the story is useless or not worth reading. It actually helps you to go back and pick up on all these pieces of how they were building it all along. If you're thinking of a movie or a book, but surely how God is building it all along. And you can see things coming to pass that are partial fulfillments of what you know is to come, instead of just being like, oh, I have no idea what's next. That's actually like the scary anti-God position of like, who knows what's going to happen to me, but it's actually the assurance and the knowledge of the finish line that gives us the ability to live with hope.
Yeah. It definitely wasn't a fluffy Advent sermon at all. So it was really good meat and potatoes. So that was great.
Yeah. It's funny you use the word fluffy right before it in a prayer with Stephen. Stephen thanked God for the fluffy stuff was the phrase that he used. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not sure I could ever get myself to thank God for the cold weather and the fluffy stuff that we have here.
In all
yeah, that's right. Oh, I'll give thanks in the circumstance, but not for every substance. That fluffy stuff makes me very cold. But yeah, the sermon wasn't fluffy stuff either.
No, it was not. But let's give a little baseline here. So you started out with the meaning of Christmas. So how did you broke down the word? Do you want to go ahead and share that?
Yeah, I just love word studies. It's kind of what one thing that's kind of my thing. So when it comes to Hebrew names, but also when it comes to actual words of Greek or Latin or English or anything. And so Christmas comes from Christ, the anointed one, the Messiah, the ultimate prophesied one who would come and save and would be a representation of God himself. And then also we have Mass, which we get the Catholic service being called Mass, which some people say that's where it comes from. It's a service about Christ, or it's a Christ festival, but you can go even deeper than that. And Mass actually comes from a Latin word for to be sent, to send forth, to dismiss, or to go. And so literally it could be translated the anointed one sent, the anointed one sent forth, which is in its own way is the gospel. It's a declaration that the anointed one has already been sent from heaven to earth. Jesus came. That's what Christmas means, which I joked in the sermon is maybe why the Satan is so focused on trying to get it to be called Xmas, because he doesn't want the gospel to be shared anymore,
Sure.
Just got to take Christ out of it and then it'll be okay, but he's the centerpiece.
Right. So why did Christ come? So you say he was sent forth. Why did he come?
Yeah, 4 different answers. And those are the 4 sermons that we're going to be giving over these 4 different Sundays of Advent. And the first one that we gave this last time is to be with us, the Son of Man came. So to be with us. So then we went through the 3 sections of to be with you or us. Who did he come to? Who is it that he's coming to be with? 2, what does it mean to be with? And then 3, what does it mean to be the Son of Man? That was his favorite name for himself, that he called himself. I think I looked it up. It was something like 68 times in the Gospels, far more than anything else. He called himself the Son of Man. And so it's important because he chose to call himself that a lot. So while we don't usually say oh, what's your religion? Oh, I follow the Son of Man. You wouldn't say that. You would usually just use Jesus, or maybe you would use Christ, but almost nobody in our own lexicon uses Son of Man very often. We just read it in the Bible, but it is interesting to note that that's his preferred name to be called. So, when Jesus asks Peter, who do you say that I am? Right before that, he says, who do others say the Son of Man is? And so he's regularly saying, who is the Son of Man? Who is the Son of Man? And then finally at his own trial, he says, I am the Son of Man. Right. You have been, this has been fulfilled in your own hearing, kind of thing. So we talk about that as the last piece of the sermon.
Yeah, we did. And I don't know, did you run out of time? Because I felt like the point 3, I was like, man.
Oh, yeah, you got me. So there was a lot on my pages that I skipped. And so I come off of that moment like, man, that was scatterbrained. And I feel like I didn't actually lay the final punches or the last transitions or something in there. But at the same time, there's other things that I think took the time and the meat and were necessary. So it's always a little bit of a give and take like that. But yeah, I always tell myself I'm not allowed more than 6 pages of 14 point, like the way that I do it. And boy, I wrote 7 and thought I could fit it in because
you were
sometimes
talking fast enough.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes the stuff just feels so rich that it's, I don't know what a good analogy would be. Man, it would be hard for me to think of one that's adequate. But I don't know. It's just every ingredient seemed key. It's not just like a random spice that you could do without. Right. It's like, man, this isn't, chili without the, whatever beans or something. So it's like, no, I need this part. And, it's a fine line between trying to honor time and to, follow the Spirit's leading in terms of if there is more meat to have on that day, then, we don't need to have that 5 minutes for the other thing. But there also is some structure involved that's helpful.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure people appreciate not being there, and I'm sure the choir also appreciated not going into their time. But so you started out, bullet point 1 was, who is you? So why was it so significant for God to, say, I'm coming to be with you?
Yeah, because this is really impactful. So let me anecdotally answer that.
Sure.
So last Sunday, there was somebody very, very dear to me. This is a true story that called me a couple hours after my message. And this person doesn't usually call me. And this person called me and said, hey, I just listened to your sermon, and I just want to let you know, this wrecked me in the best way, was the phrase that this person used. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. And then this person said to me, I need to ask you a question, and I think I already know the answer, but I want to ask you anyway. I said, okay. And this person said, do you really think God actually still wants to be with me? Me of all people. And then talked about things that person had done in that person's life that person thought, how could God still actually desire to be with me? And so this concept of who is you hit home with that person so severely that it radically changed that person. Yes, God can be your Lord, your master, the one that you're supposed to serve, that you're indebted to, that you feel thankful for, that you want to try to emulate, the example of his son, that you want to obey his commands to honor him. But the thought of him wanting to be with you, he wants to be with you, he longs to hang out with you, whatever kind of phrasing you want to use, if you embrace that, it wipes any ability towards shame away, because the creator of the universe wants to hang out with you. How is, you're not going to see yourself as worthless if that kind of worth is put upon you. Yeah. And so, that was really the key centerpiece. Anecdotally, that was powerful for that person. But just in general, the you is just important, that though there are some one-liners that you can work through about Jesus saying he came to the Jews or to the house of Israel, that it was ultimately for the whole world and to the Gentiles, perhaps the Jew first and then also to the Greek, as Paul would say in Romans 1:16, but that it's really essential to know not only that Jesus came to the Gentiles, so you're like, okay, I'm in that category, but then what kind of person did Jesus come to? And that's where you look to Ezekiel, where God says, hey, I'm going to come and seek not the fat and the strong. I'm going to come and seek the lost, the poor, the crippled, the injured, the strayed. That's who I'm coming for. And that's what Jesus quotes when he says, the Son of Man came to seek and save who? The strong? No, he says the lost. And that's what he's quoting. He's saying, hey, I came to seek the lost because back in Ezekiel 34, my Father promised that he was going to come and seek the lost. And so that's where, like, if you can identify with this concept of admitting that you have a dependence spiritually upon God and your need for being found, for being healed, for being, given your sight, the cures to these things that he's saying, the people that I'm coming for. That's where we sing Amazing Grace, that we are found, I once was lost, but now I'm found. But if you're like, I was never lost, then like God's like, yeah, that's not who I'm seeking, And so who is you? It is anyone who is admitting that they are in desperate need of God, even post salvation, that you, for your very breath, for your very provision of life, that you're in desperate need of him continually, and that he longs to be with you. It's not begrudging for him to bestow these blessings upon you like a good father would be.
Yeah. It's incredibly humbling. Like, as you're talking, it's a good reminder. It's incredibly humbling that he wants to be with us. You said there was also like a key component too of the receiving part when you had talked about Isaiah 42:6 and how it points to John 1:11-12, and then the receiving part of that.
Yeah.
So for us to receive,
right?
And so you had kind of went into a little bit more detail and gave a little bit more structure around receive. It wasn't just receiving a gift,
right?
It was.
Yeah, so John 1:12, but to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to be called children of God. So like this is very salvific. The concept of receiving Christ is like the essence of being called a child of God, which is the essence of being saved, being in the family, being in the kingdom. So it's very critical that we understand what John means when he says you are receiving him. We use believe a lot in our lexicon, but we don't really use like you receive as much, at least in certain traditions. It's interesting that the book of John never uses the word faith a single time. That's also a very curious thing. He also never has a single parable, something that I'll also share this Sunday. So there are very unique things about John and the way that he writes his gospel. And one thing that he writes a lot on is trust and receiving. These different kind of aspects of belief or of faith. And so receiving here in that passage, we talked about how it's also used for marrying in the scriptures, and it's also used for being received into a boat as if to guide. So this is far more than just like, hey, I appreciate that gift. I acknowledge your generosity. I'm going to go experience this on my own terms and play with my toy. Like that's not the kind of receiving of Jesus that we're talking about. Unfortunately, I think that's how a lot of people view this kind of optional attitude. But receiving is like an all or nothing marriage kind of receiving, like you're receiving this person to be part of your life forever. And when you're talking about the headship of Christ in the church, you're talking about submitting to him in all things,
Yeah. You had talked about like receiving and believing. They're not interdependent. They go together. And so I guess, why is it so important that they're coupled together, the believing and receiving?
Yeah, because the concept is that, yes, even the demons believe and shudder, okay? But believing in his name is the key phrase there. And so his name that he's being called there is Jesus and Emmanuel and Christ, okay? So God saves, the anointed one, and God with us. So do you believe in these things, that God comes to save his people through the death and resurrection of Jesus, because God came to be with us physically and spiritually, and that he is the anointed one? He is the fulfiller of the prophecies of the Old Testament. In Acts, it says that the apostles, after the ascension, went around teaching and preaching that Jesus is what? It says that Jesus is the Christ. They went around and, if you were there and they knocked on your door, what would, John or Peter have talked to you about? The answer is they would have talked to you about the Old Testament. They would have said, hey, this man who you think may have just been a man is the fulfiller of all of these prophecies because he's the ultimate anointed one. He's the name that we call Christ or Messiah or a Messiah because he is the ultimate anointed one, which we excitedly get to see in Daniel 9, the number one place that it talks about the Messiah in the entire Old Testament. And so that's what we get to see, I think in January, there's going to be the sermon on Daniel 9. And this is my little hot 2 cents. But Isaac Newton, who I'm more excited to see in heaven than any other person outside of Scripture. Okay, my all-time hero of the faith and history and science and everything. Okay, passionate believer in Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. He said all of his findings and inventions and discoveries he attributed to the study of Scripture. Okay, this is something that the schools probably, public schools probably won't let you know about. But Isaac Newton said that the foundation stone of the Christian religion was Daniel 9, 24 through 27. And that's the passage that talks about the Messiah coming that I'm referencing. And that's what the Jews had in mind and the apostles had in mind when they were thinking about calling him the Messiah and believing in his name, the Christ.
Wow. That brings me back to you had during our class of defending the faith. You brought that up, I think, during that class as well, which was very interesting.
Yeah,
so
a lot of the
I'm
greatest scientists were passionate believers in God, if not Jesus, for sure.
Yeah. Some even went against the Catholic Church, which was a big deal. So moving on to your second bullet point is the what is with part of this. And you had already mentioned this, but, God wants to be with us, so the lost and the injured. But then you had in here Isaiah 61:1 coupled with Luke 4:16-30. Only time where it was recorded that Jesus opened and read from a scroll. And so why is that significant?
Because he's launching his ministry right there. So literally in Luke 4 right there, it says and at this point he launched his ministry. And so, if you were going to launch a massive movement in the world or a presidential campaign or some kind of analogy, whatever you your speech to start that launch is really important, and his speech was Isaiah 61:1. That's what he chose to read. And then he said, today, this is fulfilled in your hearing. And so it's really significant that he read that from the scroll in church, if you will, in the synagogue to the leaders, and that they didn't scream at him. They actually spoke favorably. They were like, wow, this is incredible. That was such good teaching, what a great word, until he actually talked about the part where he was going to be including the Gentiles like Naaman and the widow in the Old Testament, and that people don't tend to recognize prophets in their own hometown. And he's reading their minds and saying, hey, you're expecting me to do a bunch of really cool stuff and to do some miracles. And that's not why I'm here. And then suddenly they turned on him in that passage. But that's one of the reasons why it's so important.
Yeah, that's interesting. You continued on and you started talking about speaking well of Jesus and how we would marvel at his words. So similar to what was happening in there too. But you can still be damned and go to hell.
Yeah, I actually on my page had Loveless there, and then somehow I ended up just saying damned in the sermon. But it is true. I mean, it's absolutely true. You can marvel at his words. You can speak well of Jesus. Man, he was a great teacher. Man, I really respect Jesus. He's awesome. You could even say, I love Jesus, man. He was so good. And you can be completely loveless. You can be damned. You can be outside of his family and speak really highly of someone. Anybody can speak highly of someone or marvel at some good teaching. Right. But the question is, are you receiving him? And they were not. And that's what he was pointing out is hey, you can marvel at me, but are you receiving me into your boat? Are you going to receive me as the head of your marriage kind of thing? Are you going to commit your life to me? And because I'm coming for people that are. And hey, in the Old Testament, there's some instances where instead of coming to the Jews, he actually came to these really poor people that weren't Jewish and that were actually enemies of the Jews at the time. And so I'm not just coming to a specific club or a specific genetic line. And then they were like, what are you saying? You know, that's when they got wrathful, it says.
Yeah. I appreciated this part of the sermon too, because in addition to that, you really leaned into, do you believe enough to go all in? You made that point very clear, and to obey, upside down, things that, you're called to by God. And you had also talked about the receiving and welcoming him in, and you just really hit in onto that. So how is Christianity different from other religions?
What a unique pivot there for me, Breanne.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so we're getting a little apologetic in there. How is Christianity different from other religions? I mean, we could talk for an hour about a lot of different ways that it is. As it relates to that point, if I was going to compress thoughts down into a succinct manner, a lot of people say that it's the difference between do and done, that Jesus, it's all about what has already been done, that catapults you into a life of do, but the salvation isn't dependent upon your works or what you do. It's just a result of the thankfulness that you have in your heart for what's already taken place. Whereas every other religion has this sense of like, you need to achieve, or you need to arrive, or you need to have some kind of karma built up, or whatever it's going to be. So, I mean, like, there are key differences in some regards. Like, if I was just going to say, like, the absolute essentials, I would say the difference between Christianity and every other religion is that Christianity believes that the creator of the universe came to earth himself and dwelt as a human being. There's no other religion that I know of that speaks this way. And that the singular creator came to earth and became a human being to live, suffer, die, raise from the dead, and then call other people to live that same life, not just of being good, but actually crucifying themselves, denying themselves, taking up their cross, living a life of, frankly, suffering, persecution, hatred of the world, these phrases that Jesus uses, so that you can shine in the same way he did and experience the same fulfillment and the same fruitfulness that he did. And even he says, do even greater works than this, when he's talking about some of his miracles, so that you can then experience the joy of what that entails, not to inherit salvation based on your works, but because of the thankfulness that you have for what he has already done for you. Maybe that's a little bit of coupling the two, but I would say like that concept of God being with us is something that is rather unique to Christianity.
Yeah, to quote you from Sunday, you had said, your own creator lives inside you, your creator dwells with you when gathered with other believers. In my notes, I just started and wrote, wow, because to reflect on that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, for sure. If there's one line that has been brought up multiple times to me by different people, including by that person that called me that day, it's God's definition of paradise is being with his kids. God's definition of paradise is being with you and me, if we receive Christ. And just really ruminating on that a bit, that, what he wants most is to hang out with his kids.
Yeah.
And like, what does that say to us as parents, thinking about our own kids, and how does that, change our view of God as our father, from what is really easy to get into a mentality of, a Lord, a taskmaster, a king on a throne, to like, a dad that wants to be with his kids, and like he set up the whole world and has planned this entire thing of salvation to eventually like hang out with his kids forever. Like that's what he wants to do.
And even when we don't do it right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he hangs out with us to some degree right now, but not, like as it says, now as in a mirror dimly, but then face to face, like, so now it's like partially fulfilled through his Spirit and Son. But ultimately, like eternally unified is the phrase that I used in the sermon.
Yeah, no, but just loved that point. That was great. So the third point on your sermon was why the Son of Man, and you had that, and because it was prophetized and it was glorious. So we all know that Jesus had several names. You had mentioned that he's mostly called the Son of Man in the Bible.
Well, he usually calls himself the son of man, right?
So then why is that so significant that it's always the Son of Man? Because I think I looked it up. Was there like 15 other names or something? You probably know off the top of your head.
Yeah, I don't have a number. I mean, like Isaiah has some classic, wonderful counselor, Prince of Peace. Like there's a lot of different phrases or names that are given for Jesus, some that he gives himself, some that other people call him and stuff. But yeah, the one that when he's self-describing, himself or giving prophecies, sometimes he uses I, but sometimes he uses the third person, it's like if I was to say, Alex is going to go to the store after this, it sounds weird, but he uses a phrase that's not I a lot of times to describe what he's going to do one day. And he uses the Son of Man almost all the time when he uses that phrase. And I think the reason for that is because the Son of Man always incorporates, at least from a Jewish perspective, you have to really know like the culture and the context of the Bible, but when they would hear the Son of Man, they would immediately think of glory, of angels, of the coming of clouds and power, because this is what they eventually killed him for when he said, you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. And then they said, blasphemy, crucify him, because they knew that was a claim to be God. And so the Son of Man, when you're claiming to be the Son of Man in that capacity, yes, Ezekiel and others in Scripture were called the Son of Man, but in a different way. And so it was this concept of glory and of prophecy. When you're saying like you're the Son of Man, you're saying that you are going to personally fulfill everything that in the Old Testament is said the Son of Man would fulfill, which is elaborate. There's a lot of different things. One of the big ones that the Jews were looking toward is this concept of freedom from oppression. So they were saying, but the Son of Man is supposed to like liberate us. So if you're not going to kick Rome out, then you are a blaspheming liar and you should be killed. And so he was trying to point them to a different kingdom. And they weren't having it because they were sick of their own circumstances, which can appeal to every one of us when we try to pray a lot more about our circumstances than we do about character or about fruitfulness of the kingdom, because we're so focused on our own victimization or oppression or abuse or challenges that we face personally, which are very real and important to disclose to God in prayer. But yeah, you can get carried away with those things and forget the bigger picture that's actually at hand.
Yeah. One of the verses that you had used during this section here, you had talked about how the Son of Man would come in his glory and all the angels with him. So Matthew 25, 31 through 34. And then you also had it point to Revelation 1, 12 through 18.
Yeah.
And you read that and just, how he's described in Revelation. And you said, remember him not as a baby, but remember him as this, that is right here in Revelation. And so during this Advent and Christmas season, why is it so important to remember, yes, he came as a baby, but to also remember that he grew up and to remember how he's described here in Revelation?
Imagine if I looked at you, Breanne, and when I saw you, I saw the little baby that you once were. Would that be an appropriate way for me to look at you today, to like just see you as a baby? Because at one point you were a baby, and to like always celebrate that you were a baby. And you're like, no, I'm like a full grown woman and I have these ways of investing in a lot of people's lives. In fact, I can go about and produce children and care for them and actually like, pass the baton kind of thing, and it would just be inappropriate if you saw adults only as the babies they once were, and so like Jesus isn't a baby anymore, so you can look at a baby, you can look at a manger, and you can have an absolute awestruck wonder that the Creator once fit in that box, that the Creator, your Creator, Mary's Creator, was once that little baby that came out of her. But I think it's critical that when we talk about worshiping and trusting and receiving Jesus, that we see him for who he is currently and who we will see face to face and who will be coming on the clouds of heaven to greet us, and it's not a baby. In fact, it's somebody that is so glorious that it makes John fall down as though dead, So like the radical opposite of a baby. Maybe with a baby you fall down and like, oh my goodness, it's the cutest little thing. Like when women like squat down over a little like stroller or something. But imagine falling down as though dead out of fear from seeing something so glorious. We don't really have a category for that.
Right.
And that's actually what would happen if you saw Jesus right now. That's what would happen.
Right.
And, I think it's just really important to not lose this reverence, this wonder for how great and powerful and majestic our Jesus is, because it can be very easy, especially in our culture, to see like baby Jesus, and then he grows up and he's gentle and he's lowly and he's compassionate and he doesn't speak harshly and, these kinds of things. And then you're like, but wait, what about the Pharisees? What about that he spoke to? What about who he is these days? We need a full picture of who Jesus is.
Right. So if somebody doesn't know what Advent is, how would you describe Advent to them?
I would say it is the season of preparation for the festival of celebrating that the Anointed One was sent forth. So Advent is, I think, traditionally the 4 Sundays before Christmas. Some people celebrate it as just December 1 through 24. But ultimately, it's the attempt to prepare yourself for the feast or the festival or the service where you get to rejoice in this historical event that isn't just a day in history, but it's a transformative day for all of creation, including nature itself. Paul says, groans in the pains of childbirth as it awaits the freedom of the hope of the children of God. I mean, powerful things in Romans 8 that's talking about how the trees will clap their hands and the rocks will cry out, as kind of the entire creation is preparing for Jesus to return. And in the meantime, we can prepare our hearts to receive afresh this reality that Jesus came, not unlike how we do for communion, where we come before the table and we prepare our hearts to take seriously the remembrance of these key events in history that radically change everything forever.
This is good. It probably wouldn't fit on a greeting card, though.
Yeah. If you want a one-liner, what is Advent? First off, don't have me apply for that job. I would never
How about you write a book?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not in the greeting card one-liner business, unless you just want that sermon title at the top. But it's, I would say it's Advent is the excited preparation for the glorious coming of Jesus that has changed everything.
Yeah. That would fit on a greeting card.
Tried.
Good job.
I tried.
You did. I feel like there might be room for a picture or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the bottom of your sermon notes here in the bulletin that you had some questions for us to consider. One was, Christ came to us, but have you come to him? So how can someone check themselves to know that they have come to him?
Boy, now that is a deep question saved for, it's good that on this podcast we have another 45 minutes to dive into.
I'm glad that you don't have anywhere to be. This is great.
This deep question here. How can we check ourselves to see if we've truly come to him? If you wanted like a pithy short answer, my answer to you would be read 1 John. Okay. That's my answer. There's like 12 different times. I don't have it actually calculated, but it's something like that. 12 different times in 1 John where he says, hey, you want to know how you know? You want to know if you're in him? This is how you know. Hey, you want to know if you have the Spirit? This is how you know. Hey, you want to know if you're saved? This is how you know. You want to know if you're truly in him? And he says it in a lot of different ways. There's multiple different things. Just read the book of 1 John and really ruminate over if these characteristics are true in your life in increasing manner. That's what I really want to focus on. This isn't like, oh gosh, I screw up. Like this is, like I'm not, because like it'll say like, this is how we know that we are in Jesus if we obey his commandments. You're like, well, I obey them sometimes,
Yeah,
It's like, but do you obey them increasingly in some capacity? Like, are you learning to obey or are you learning to rebel? Like, are you maturing? Are you growing at all? And if you say like, no, I can't really point to any way where I'm actually growing or maturing or anything like that. Well, I'd say like, well, then you really need to evaluate whether or not you're alive at all. As I said in a previous growth sermon, everything that's living grows. So if you say, oh, I'm alive in Christ, I'm just not growing. It's like that is antithetical to the concept of life. And so, that's what I'd say.
Way to tie it back to another sermon.
Oh, yeah.
I always appreciate that. Okay.
The Bible can do that. It's a good old smorgasbord over there.
There is. The last question I just want listeners to reflect on too is, how is the Lord calling you to change? So I appreciated those questions, but not asking you to answer it, but just as a reflection for those listening. And so in being in Advent, so we were remembering Jesus' birth while anticipating his second coming, which leads us into traditions. Like we have traditions, right, every year that aren't necessarily Christian, but there are some pagan roots in there. But, what are traditions that you and Kendra are hoping to do with your family during the Advent season?
Yeah, it's interesting in this whole concept of like how many of the decorations or how many of the different traditions come from different pagan, cultures and whatnot. And I've actually had a couple people flood me with different things that are like, hey, actually, they may not have these different origins. And you can debate these till the cows come home, about like where they come from. But I think the big thing is like anything, it's the attitude of the heart and the significance to which you put on something. And being really wise to know when you are flirting with things that don't have meanings that are helpful, and when you can actually repurpose things that are to be actually truly meaningful. So, I mean, like, I'll tell you what, we have already started that Advent book. For my little 2.5-year-old, does she understand every word? Does she just want to flip the little flip book? I don't know, but it definitely is not hurtful. I would say that, it is helping her little by little to see the importance of going through things with mommy and daddy, and to see that this time of year is very important because it helps us to remember something that will change our lives forever. So, so I think that would be one thing. We aren't super sentimental, so we don't have like I should speak for myself. I don't have like a whole bunch of nostalgia of like different key things that we always do on certain days or times or wake up to certain things. Like we didn't really do much of that myself. But I will say, here's one thing I'll finish with. When I was a little boy, my dad would always take my sister and I to the nursing homes to go carol at the nursing homes. And he would call us the Cheerfulies.
Oh, that's great.
And sometimes I would have my trumpet and she'd have the flute and my dad would just sing. Sometimes we'd just go there and we'd listen to their stories and we'd sing. But that is something that I think should be done all months of the year because God has stockpiled widows for us to go bless, and he's told us to do so. And I think that it's a joy to actually be able to invest in people's lives who have invested in our nation for decades, and a lot of them have a lot of really important wisdom for us, not unlike a 90-year-old tomorrow, right?
That's right. Yeah.
There's another full circle for you.
I like it. I appreciate it. So we have 4 Sundays to cover, right? We had Hope this past week.
Peace is coming up.
So Peace is this Sunday.
John 3.
Okay.
Get
so
excited.
You're going to get it. You mentioned it'll be a little different.
Yeah, but everybody listening here, almost everybody, could recite John 3:16.
Yeah.
But I am frankly quite certain that there's a lot of aspects of that passage and that verse specifically that you may be unaware of, and that may radically change your view of that verse, of what it actually is about and the context of it. So when I studied this a while back, actually, it really revolutionized my view of John 3:16. When I see that verse somewhere, it's not just like, oh yeah, I remember that verse about the gospel. It's like, no, actually, there's a lot of rich, unique things about that passage.
That's what's so beautiful about it. The richness you can keep getting. It's living.
Yeah.
And new stuff every time. So I'm looking forward to it this Sunday now with what you're planning to bring. Some new freshness to John 3:16, which is great.
Yeah. Don't forget it. Jesus is like a snake.
Well, now you're going to have to explain that one.
John 3:14 and 15.
All right.
Just like Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so too the Son of Man must also be lifted up. We aren't really comfortable in using these kinds of analogies of Jesus like a bronze serpent. We usually think of a serpent as the opposite of Jesus. But this is the verses that precede the 3:16 verse that we are familiar with. And so it's really important that we understand what Nicodemus was hearing and thinking about, the story that he was thinking about, that he had visualized in his mind when he heard 3:16, and that we should have in our mind too. Yeah. And it's the mind of Jesus. It's the picture of Jesus being like a serpent.
Well, this is a good little teaser for Sunday.
Yeah, I got to give you something.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you, Alex. Thank you for giving the message on Sunday and for doing it this coming Sunday.
Absolutely. It's an absolute blessing, honestly. I get so pumped for it. It's like an absolute honor. It's not like, no, what a sacrifice. No, it's the absolute opposite.
Well, and it's good to be together. We'll also be celebrating communion too. So we'll get the opportunity to do that as well. So friends, church is at 9:30, right, Alex?
That's right. And choir practice at 11. Come sing.
Come sing with us. Well, it's been an honor to be here with you guys today.